Hi, my name is Yasin, and in this video I'm going to be talking about hatching and cross-hatching. Okay, so what is cross-hatching used for? Or perhaps it's better to start with hatching and then I'll move into cross-hatching. So it's used for, well, this is my opinion, but it's used for two main purposes. One is to establish tone. So you can use lines like this, and kind of gives you a value, and if I wanted to darken it, I can add more lines. Or I could add cross lines to darken that. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to establish contour. So let's say I have a cylinder here. I can use hatching to show that this area of the cylinder is flat, and then by using strokes that go around the form, I can show that this is rounded. And you can combine the two. So this not only shows it's rounded, but also that may be light's coming from down here, and this is in shadow. And usually in a picture you use all three. So you'll have hatch lines that are meant for tone, hatch lines that are meant for contour, and hatch lines that are meant for both. So maybe it's good for me to show you how I think you should approach hatching and how you shouldn't. Now again, I have to preface this by saying this is all my opinion, and it's not necessarily something I was taught. This is just something that I figured, and it seems to work for me, and so I'm sharing it with you. But to begin with, what to do? Well, for me, when I create hatched lines, I like to keep them all going in the same direction. And that direction for me is just what's comfortable. We all kind of have an angle that's comfortable for our arms and maybe wrist movements. I prefer to use my elbow when I draw and my shoulder. So for me, lines like this is very comfortable, or this is comfortable. Going the opposite direction like this, I find that much harder to do. Or up and down, straight up and down ones, I find that hard to do. So I tend to just stick with an angle like this. It's about 45 degrees or a bit less. What you don't want to do is have, and this is for the drawings where you're using cross-hatching to establish tone. Let's just say we have an arm here. You don't want to be shading it with lines kind of going everywhere, because this doesn't really make sense, and your picture looks messy. The other thing you don't want to do is use strokes. Like, let's say I was going to shade this, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to find where the shadow is, and I'm just blocking that in with this line to say that, okay, the shadow is going to be on this side, for example. Then what I do is I block in the tone. So at this point, I'm not worrying about the contour lines. But what I wouldn't want to do is to block in the tone like this. And this is what I often see with a scribbly line like that. Now, why I prefer to use lines like this instead of this, let me just make my brush bigger, is because when I make lines like this, you see how where you first put your pencil, in this case I'm using a tablet pen, but this makes more sense when I think of it in terms of a pencil, because that's really how I learned this, is that when you put your pencil down, the most pressure tends to be here at your first point, when you first put your pencil down, and then your line gets thinner and a bit lighter as you quickly move away. But when you do the scribbly line, you'll notice here you get points of pressure, but also here. Whereas here you just have it here. And you can do another technique where you kind of, okay, so let's say this is the surface of the paper, and the most pressure happens at this point, and I go with my pencil, I put it down here. Okay, let's make that look a bit more like a pencil. Okay, so most pressure is here, and then I kind of go this direction, and the pressure gets less. What you can do as well is take this, and instead of going like this, you go down and then touch the paper and move like that. So you get that kind of a U motion. What that is going to do is it's going to make it so instead of having the pressure here, get lines that at this edge it's light, and then here it's light, and then here it gets darker. So the most pressure happens at this point instead of here. And what happens when you shade like this, and this is something you have to practice, but when you do it this way, so your pencil comes down, touches the paper and goes up, and then bring your pencil over, and then do that again. You don't want to go like this. You want to go down, move over, down. Is that you get this really smooth buildup of tone. And the darkest part happens in the middle. And so what happens in your drawing is it looks like you have it fade off as it approaches the light. And it starts off kind of light anyway, so that could be reflected light, but it just looks very elegant. Whereas this way, where you have all these pressure points here and here, it just looks ugly. It just doesn't look good. So what do you need to practice? Well, you need to be able to make lines that are pretty straight and pretty parallel. Now, to practice that, a good approach is to, and I learned this from a Nomon video many years ago, where Feng Zhu talked about it, where he would put 2 points down on a piece of paper, and he would practice trying to connect those points. And that really helps you to be able to make straight lines. Parallel lines, I think it just takes practice, but also finding the motion of your arm that's most comfortable helps you to make a lot of the same straight lines. So that's one thing you have to do, is to be able to make these straight lines and parallel lines. And the other thing is to practice being able to kind of vary your pressure, so you can do that U thing where your pencil goes down like that, but keep it fairly straight. So you'd only see that U if you really zoomed in. So I was exaggerating before and I was drawing lines like this. Well, really I'm going to be drawing straight lines. So you don't really see that U motion happening, because when the pencil's not touching the page, you're not making a mark anyway. It's just when the pencil's in contact with the surface of your page that the mark happens. So that U becomes pretty straight. So those are the two things for hatching. Now, with cross-hatching, I just use it after hatching. So I'll establish my tone first. and then in areas I want it darker, I'll put my hatch lines. Now, what I found that I like to do is, when I was looking at books that would teach about hatching and tones, they'd always have diagrams. Just make my brush a bit smaller. They'd have maybe the first one like this, then the second one like this. Show how you can build up tone. Third one. Like this. And I find these type of lines to be kind of ugly, personally. What I like to do is, if I have a set of lines going like this, instead of going like this to get this kind of diamond pattern, I like to just go a bit in a different angle. So I get this kind of stretched out look. And I find with that you can do a lot more in terms of subtle tones, where, okay, I'll have lines going here, then can have lines going here, then even more. But to me, this looks a lot prettier than this. This gets kind of messy. So that's how I use hatching. Now, where did I learn this? Well, I learned this from looking at this picture by Michelangelo. It's the study for the Libyan Sibyl. And just studying the way he does hatch lines. So now what I noticed is he started off by putting tones of lines in the same direction. You can see they're all going in the same direction. And here in the back you can see he started going in this direction. And then he just slightly altered it at points. And this is to follow the contour. So the back is coming this way, and then it goes down into here, and then up here, and then across, like that. So first he just established the broad tones, and then with the cross lines, he'd follow the contours. Sometimes his lines, as you see here, are curved to follow the contour like that. And sometimes they're straight, but they just describe the flow. And I didn't really see too many times where he would make lines go like this way and then do the cross that you often see in art books. You can see he'd do lines and then he'd kind of build up on them. Or he would make the lines go in one direction and then slightly move them in a different direction. And here you can see he's using his lines as to describe both the contour and the tone. So this is getting a bit in shadow, so he'll add some lines like that. With the nose, again, he has the basic tone, he puts it down, then he goes in the direction to show that this surface is coming down this way. So that's the secondary lines. So pretty much that's my advice on cross-hatching and how to handle it. You start out with a basic tone, as Michelangelo did here. Then you can add other tones. Tones work well when you build it up going in the same direction, and then you can add the contour lines to describe the form. Okay, now I just want to show you this, I guess it's some bonus information of something I use to make patterns. And I guess it's related to hatching, that's why I use it. That's why I'm including it in this portion. But what I do is, let's say this is a guy. And I want to give him a background. What I do is like 5 lines, and I just vary the direction. So it's easier to just show it. I'll go like 5 lines this way, maybe 5 lines that way, that needed to be more straight. And each time I'm just changing the angle so that no two lines are going in the same direction that are touching each other. And after a while of building it up, it gets this kind of cool pattern. So anyway, that's nothing too impressive. I just wanted to share that for people who maybe didn't know that. And I don't think I invented this. I mean, I figured it out myself, but I think I've seen other people using things like this. Okay. That's it for me. Thanks for watching.